this is the circumstance of someone that does not heed this message, and due to their impure state, their life is just absorbed in sense gratification. Here's Prabhupada's words. In the impure state of a living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord by hearing about Him from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. Therefore, the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam should be preached all over the world very loudly. That is the duty of a pure devotee who has actually heard about them from the perfect sources. Many want to speak something to others, but because they are not trained to speak on the subject matter of Vedic wisdom, they are all speaking nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. Just listening to this, and viewing this interview of Srila Prabhupada in 1975 in Los Angeles, and forget what the exact question was. The question was, Swamiji, are you helping your followers to come to the conclusion that one should find the Guru within? And Prabhupada said, where is that stated? They were, I don't know, I've heard it. Where is that stated? Guru within. Then he went down the path of saying, there are persons who have come to this country with that teaching, teaching that you don't need a teacher. Said, do you see the deception? They're coming and teaching, you don't need a teacher. Then someone else volunteered, yes, and one has written a book saying you don't need books. So then the interviewer wanted to go on.
Prabhu, yes, Prabhu. Sorry, Prabhu. Can you just increase the font size even a little bit more? And second thing, you need not highlight like each word, but 2-3 sentences, but one shot you can highlight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I said, I want to know what you think. Is this not rascaldom? And they wouldn't say rascaldom. It was contradictory. And when you speak, your teacher, you speak contradictory. What is that? That is rascal. You're taking the position of teacher and saying you don't need a teacher. You're writing books and saying you don't need to read books. So many people want to speak to others, but they're not trained to speak on the subject matter of Vedic wisdom. They're speaking all nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. So this Prabhupada was making this point, because persons don't know, they don't even take the time to discriminate. Now certainly if we know, then that gives us strength of discrimination. This is not real. It's very frustrating and disturbing for a transcendentalist to see how the illusory energy dupes, bewilders the average person. There are hundreds and thousands of sources for distributing mundane news of the world, and people in the world are also receiving it. Similarly, the people of the world should be taught to hear the transcendental topics of the Lord, and the devotees of the Lord must speak loudly so that they can be heard. Then the frogs loudly croak, and with the result that they invite the snakes to eat them. I was in Tuaco on Saturday evening. They have a pond, and they said it was like a, thank you kind of an event. What do you call those things? Yeah, appreciation dinner, appreciation evening. So after the whole evening was over, it was a nice evening, and we went outside for prasadam. Fantastic prasadam, I was told. And there was a frog who was under the porch, and he was really making such a racket. I thought, maybe it's, I didn't know what it was, but they said, no, under there was a big bullfrog. Really, really loud, like a whole orchestra in one guy. So the people were talking, and the frog was making his sound. So what's the benefit? Is there a particular difference of benefit between the frogs croaking and the person speaking? If the frog is just making his sound, he's just inviting, here I am. Although it's the dead of night, the serpent can then know where his prey is and swallow the frog. So, like the text 17, where the passing of each day and night is simply drawing one closer to death. So this is an elaboration on that theme. This power of speech is to be used in a positive way, to bring one and others, oneself and others, closer to the position of Krishna. And that's by speaking Krishna Katha. And if the tongue isn't used, then it's like the croaking of the frog, inviting death. Come and catch me. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns, and not for croaking like frogs. The word asati, used in this verse, is also significant. Asati means a woman who has become a prostitute. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue, which is given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns, will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense. So, mentioned in the verses both the tongue of the frog, but also the ear holes that hear those sounds are like the holes of snakes. So Prabhupada has elaborated on this very, not here in the purport, but elsewhere with great alacrity. He's described that in agricultural fields one will find many holes. And he said, you go on the beach and you'll find many holes. But particularly in agricultural fields, many holes. And holes means some living entities inside. And the snakes come along, and the mouse, the field mouse that has made the hole, the snake goes down the hole, eats the mouse, and lives in the hole. other sounds. They just provide an entrance for the poison-like serpent of mundane sound to enter the ear and contaminate consciousness. The ear that is used in that way is no better than the holes of snakes. So snakes don't have ear holes, but there's holes in the ground, and there's holes of snakes. So our vitality will be taken away. Certainly the purpose of human life will likewise be taken away just by hearing of mundane sounds, and there's abundant mundane sounds. In case there's so many channels for propagating mundane news. One of the disturbing things about travel is whenever there's a lounge, they got to have a TV going where there's blah 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 stuff all the time. From this side and from that side, and speakers all around where you are. You can't get away from it. And then the car ride to the airport, you keep the windows down, and people are blasting sounds out of their cars. Wow. And the quality of those sounds, every third car is rap music, and it's no wonder with people hearing that stuff all day long, anger, that they're angry people, and they do violent things. So Shukadeva Goswami is condemning one who doesn't use this human form of life to hear and chant the topics of Krishna, having previously described the virtues of Krishna Katha, and that being a symptom of pure devotional service. One who doesn't utilize this human form of life is acting like a living entity in a lower species. So the language sounds very condemning and harsh, but it's to help us understand. Let us keep far away those misuses of the instrument for speaking, the tongue, the instrument for hearing, the ear, primary instruments for devotional service, hearing and chanting about Krishna. Any discussion?
I have a question in respect of engagement of the senses. That there are two aspects of it. One is that you actually actively go out and do something, and the second is like do something mundane. So you engage your senses in doing something mundane. You go out and let's say
whatever it is.
Whatever it is. So you make a conscious attempt to go and do that.
Yeah.
And the second is like you consciously try and do something that is spiritual. And the first one seems to be relatively, I guess, easier to control. That you kind of decide not to do it, so you don't do it. But the second is kind of more difficult. That you say, okay, let me, whatever time I have, let me go and read or do kirtan or one of the other things. So is there a different technique in one of the other?
Well, a comment is if you're not consciously choosing activities of devotional service, then 100% absolutely for certain by default, then it's going to be activities of sense gratification, not a third position. So the curtailing of going out and doing some sense gratification may have its, obvious for a devotee, like cut-off point to draw the line. I'm not going to go do that. I'm not going to go do that. I'm not going to go do a whole bunch of other things. But then there's this other area that's not, if it's not explicitly doing this for Krishna, doing that for Krishna, doing for Krishna, extending the senses for the satisfaction of Krishna, the master of the senses, then there's this other area that, is that devotional service or is that sense gratification? And if it's not for Krishna, at best it's mixed. So the technique is certainly
Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions in today's lecture? Yes, Sarbari Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's a very beautiful lecture as usual, and particularly the sentence where if it is not done properly, this teaching part and this hearing part, it is like one person is speaking nonsense that is making no sense. So this particular sentence was repeated twice in whatever portion was shared today. And also the analogies of tongue like a frog and ear holes of a snake, they were very beautifully explained by Maharaj. So I liked it very much. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Yes, Sanatan Gopras Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Actually, we have to use the instruments for speech and hearing, and that should be used effectively and positively. That's what he says. And when you hear nonsense, they misguide these instruments, and we should always be engaged in devotional service. If you don't get engaged in devotional, default is you go for sense enjoyment. You should, by hearing all these things continuously, you forget the purpose of life, and the vitality goes away. That's why he says we should be always, our senses must be used always for Krishna conscious purpose and Krishna Katha hearing, and you should keep away from the mundane things. We should never hear from frogs like that. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Any other devotee wants to share?
Pranam. So
Hare
it's
Krishna Mataji. Janath Pranam.
so it's a nice reminder again that if we are not doing what we are supposed to do, then will be doing something which is not worth doing. So it's a serious reminder for all of us that we have to start more and more what we are supposed to do or what we are born for. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes. Thank you, Mataji. The default, like the impact of the material senses, like it's a default. We're getting attracted with the material things. So that's where we should be always very careful and alert, so not to get diverted. Maharaj explained very nicely. Shamkund Prabhu. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all for telling some things that you liked. Just one anecdote that I recall. In this class today, Maharaj said that what do most people do? This everybody just keeps watching some mundane news. Many years ago, I think it was sometime around 1998. Maharaj was probably 50 years old at that point in time. He had come to India and he was taking a treatment in an Ayurvedic center in Bombay. And he had with him one or two devotees who were there to assist him. He would go to the Ayurvedic center in the morning and evening for some whatever Ayurvedic treatments that they would do. And as usual, there is a particular diet to be followed in Ayurveda, especially during the treatment. And these two devotees, two young men, they were helping him with all the cooking and cleaning the house and keeping the house or the room in order and all of that stuff. And so he was staying in a house, and every day in the morning, a newspaper would come. So these two young disciples of his, it was almost like 7 o'clock in the morning. They were standing outside the house, and they saw. I mean, the newspaper boy delivered a newspaper, and they just opened the newspaper and they were seeing the newspaper. And Maharaj looked at them from inside the house and saw them seeing the newspaper. He came out, he rushed out of the house, he took the newspaper from their hands, went to a trash can and put it into the trash can and walked inside. Very heavy, you can say that, very strict, you can say in that way, those days, 1998, 27 years ago. But Maharaj wanted the devotees that, his disciples and even the other devotees in general, that to give them the training which Srila Prabhupada had given them, that Srila Prabhupada used to follow the Srimad Bhagavatam, like whatever is given in this verse, no time being spent on this unnecessary mundane news. And he wanted to pass it on to the next generation. And so he would sometimes do it by being strict like this, not speak a word, but just do something like that. And at one point in time, he realized, or not, I shouldn't say realized, he did mention to some of his disciples that not everybody is ready to take in such a heavy dealing. They begin to doubt. That's my spiritual master like me. Am I so bad? If I were to do this, how will he consider me? And as a result, Maharaj left this kind of a training to others, because if for most people, if it is just the spiritual master who does it, and that's the only nice relationship they have, and if the spiritual master is heavy, most likely they may not even progress further in the spiritual life. Because when one does not see the spiritual master with a proper vision, one cannot progress further in life. So Maharaj entrusted this heavy duty work to others at some point in time to do it there. But he also said one thing. He said that most people, most devotees cannot handle something being told straight. It needs a lot of purification, and it needs a particular temperament for a person to take it up. So from our own side, we can say that number one, there is a big tendency in us to watch news and be up to date with the news. And we need to think, is it really necessary? The modern digital world is having an information overload. Most people end up collecting information, and some go to the little next step. They bookmark some websites, or they copy paste some information and keep it there. And how many of them actually even take this information and use it proactively? In other words, like what Maharaj said and what some of you have told, like Sanatan Gopraj also told, that and Shweta Mataji, if we are not using something for Krishna, we will be using it for something material. So even if we collect information, how much of it can we use for Krishna? So that thought has to be there. And when one keeps collecting information and information, it becomes such a sensory overload and a mental overload that it takes time away from living in a relationship with the holy name. It takes time away from living in a relationship with devotees, with scriptures. It's so one has to be careful of one's time, and that's what Maharaj wanted to show by his interaction with the devotees in 1998. That's one point there, and the other point is we have to be amenable so that I'll use the language of our local temple leader, Varada Krishna Prabhu, that we have to be so pliable and amenable to others that somebody can just come honestly and say, "Hey, you're doing this nice. Hey, I don't know why you're doing it like this." And nobody should think twice to sugarcoat it or anything. The day when we are, the day when somebody can talk to us honestly, that day we can consider that, yes, it's a success in my life that I have somebody who can talk to me honestly. That's it, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nicely explained. So, any comments from the devotees? Yes, Sarbari Mataji.
Just wanted to comment on what Shantin Prabhu said. The last sentence that he said was a very nice one. That the day people are able to say something honestly and the receiver is able to take it openly, that is such a beautiful state. And still there is a long way to go for me particularly. Thank you, Shantin Prabhu, for this great whatever you said. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Vile Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Whatever Sharabari Mataji repeated, I didn't got that one. Maybe little bit more about that statement, Prabhu. Any scenario or something, a little example.
Like say for example, I mean, what Sharbari Mataji like this. Say somebody were to tell me, uh, I, why are you doing this way? I see you doing it like this, and is this right? I don't think it is right. Or you're doing this, it's nice. If somebody were to talk to us like that, either we have an apprehension sometimes of why is he telling this to me? Is this right for him to speak like this? He never understands me, or he or she, whoever that can be. I have done so much. They don't see it, but they're only seeing this small part of what I'm doing. And then we become very reticent. We withdraw and we get angry, and then we try to avoid the other person, and or we try to substantiate what you said is incorrect. Actually, this is what I meant to do. And when our response is one of reticence, that is withdrawal, or anger kept inside, or anger explicitly told outside, others will hesitate to speak to us. Or we can even go to the next level. We can even maneuver ourselves to do such a way that if you are saying this, I will ensure that everybody thinks bad about you. That's the next level also. So what Vardha Krishna Prabhu told in the class in Saidana Mataji's house in the CC reading one day was, it is indeed a great fortune if when we go sit across a table, someone can easily open their heart and say honestly whatever they want. But if anybody hesitates to speak to us honestly, it's a problem. And sometimes the problem is not just because of us. Sometimes it may be like say for example, if there's a leader, uh, the very fact that somebody is in a leadership position, others will get intimidated by it, thinking he has the power with him, he can do anything on me. So it may not be with the other person who has power, but it may be with us, who we may have our own fears, we may have our own insecurities which we're projecting on others. So to have a person who doesn't have fear, who doesn't have insecurity, and who is open to receive, such a person is a great person. And we all should strive to be like that. And when we strive to be like that, others can speak to us honestly. That's the thing, Prabhu. I mean, in other words, even if you were to have a guru, the guru can speak to us when he knows that we can take an instruction or forget an instruction, just a viewpoint, or even deliberate upon a viewpoint. But everything, if it is made too personal, why did he tell me this? Why not that? Of all the people, why did he choose to tell me this? Uh, Maybe there is something wrong in me, or he actually is a very selfish person. He's a controlling person, and I am the only person who can be controlled. That is why he's telling me. I mean, the mind plays all sorts of tricks. That's what can be avoided in our progress. Does this help, Vilay Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes. Also, you gave a very nice analogy when Maharaj in those time he snatched the newspaper and all of that. Uh, so personally, for me, it gets very difficult to come out of reading about news or like going through all of that, and then as Maharaj also mentioned very nicely that it follows the consciousness. So. The solution for that is to withdraw forcefully a little bit at the start, or putting a positive thing in life, uh, more reading about Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or how one should go about this, Prabhu? Just quickly, something.
Okay, I'll share my thoughts and others can add to it. Nice question. In the beginning stages, it is as one's uh, spiritual life is budding, as it is nascent, it is better to avoid the news. Not because it's not because of whether we'll be able to handle the news or not, but rather because it sucks our time. And it probably sometimes in the beginning stages, even when we chant, the thoughts go to something else. Why did Pakistan do this? How many runs did Virat Kohli hit? So many things like that, right? So that's one thing that we can do in the beginning stages. Is there any time when it is safe? Not exactly. But does it mean that we should not know anything about the world? No. If you need to know something about the world, then it is better that as we read it, use it for Krishna. For example, you may read an article, and in that article, try to think, if this person who's writing, he doesn't have any understanding of the Vedic scriptures. If you were to write the same article, what would be your perspective? Take a pen and a paper and note it down. In that way, whatever you're reading also becomes an element for you to dive deeper into what you have already understood, and use it to impress upon not to impress upon your own mind, and maybe to others also, uh, the value of the guidance coming from scriptures and other devotees. So relate it to the transcendental messages. But even that, please, the first and foremost thing is limit the time. When I was in my 11th and 12th, I used to have a math teacher then, and she used to tell us, I tell my own children that if you want, you can watch movies. But after you watch movies, when you come out of watching the movie, your mind should not be on the movie. If you can guarantee that, watch the movie. If you cannot guarantee it, don't watch the movie. And I think the approach here to news and everything else is something similar. If you all were to get into this habit of watching news or hearing or reading news, however you call it, then the same criteria can be applied, Prabhu. Will we get affected by continuously thinking about it, or will our life process change, or no? Like, say for example, we may need to know news that maybe there is no water supply in our area. That's important. It's to know whether I have to store some extra water, etc. Will there be a power cut? Yeah, important to know that. Is there going to be a curfew for whatever reason? Yes, important to know that. But other things we'll have to be very careful about it. Does it help?
Yes, Prabhu, it helps. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Uh, it goes into some kind of a cycle where, like, if we try to know something important, along with that, some unimportant things also come, and
Yeah.
that's a little bit
Yes.
worry.
Yes. And that's why, first and foremost, is putting a time box in our daily lives, that I need to do X minutes of this, Y minutes of this. And there should be sufficient time for spiritual activities, number one. Number two should be professional development, or I'm not telling in a particular pecking order. I'm just telling the list. Number three is time to be spent with families. Number four is community service. Uh, Community service, that is service with people. So when I said number one, devotional service, you can say it includes people, but I'm just making it more explicit with this number four. When all of this is done, then look, after this, is there time? And if the time that is remaining is a lot, then it means that we can actually add some more time to that 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes people end up spending a lot of time with family. It's just that they're walking around being lazy, etc. But it is not directed kind of thing. Does it mean that every waking minute we have to be just chanting? Ideally, yes. That should be our goal. Our goal should be the tongue should not stop vibrating with the whole. I mean, it should not stop vibrating the holy name. That's the target. But that doesn't mean we are insensitive to those around. What usually happens is, in the name of spending time with family and just doing things, mostly we are doing low impactful work. Neither are we actively engaging with our family members, nor are we actively engaging in something else. It's just time goes off. So a greater awareness of time is required, and sometimes this time sandboxing helps. Um, that's it.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Villa Prabhu, for asking that question. And thank you, Champion Prabhu, for briefing. Okay, it's already 7:10. Shall we close the session, Prabhu?
Just want to thank Shamkun Prabhu for his views for both the questions. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll meet again tomorrow. वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नमः सरस्वती ललिता ठाकुर की जय। जगत गुरु शील प्रभुपाद की जय। महाराज की जय। हरे कृष्णा।
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण।